Hey there, friends. Have you ever tried learning English but felt lost or stuck? Maybe you know some grammar and vocabulary, but speaking still feels like a challenge. Trust me, I've been there too. But don't worry, I've got your back. In today's video, I'll share the simple yet powerful tips that helped me go from feeling nervous to speaking with confidence. Whether you're just starting or looking to improve, this channel is all about making English easy and practical for everyday life. So stick around because by the end of this video, you'll see just how simple and fun learning English can be. Hi, I'm Sarah, and today I want to share my journey with you.
And today I want to share my story about learning English. I wasn't always good at it. In fact, I struggled a lot in the beginning. But over time, I found some useful tips and methods that really helped me. And I believe they can help you too, no matter what level you're at. So, let's start from the very beginning of my journey. When I first decided to learn English, I didn't know where to start. There were so many things to learn: words, grammar rules, pronunciation. It all felt like too much at once. I remember feeling overwhelmed, wondering how I could possibly remember all of it. But one day, I realized something important. I didn't need to learn everything at once. You see, learning English or any language is like building a house. You need to start with the foundation. So I began by focusing on the basics, the things I would use in my daily life. For me, that was simple words and phrases, greetings, introductions, and common questions. Words like hello, thank you, how are you, and goodbye. I even kept a small notebook with me to write down new words and review them when I had free time. At first, speaking English in front of others made me nervous. I was so afraid of making mistakes. But here's the thing. Making mistakes is part of the learning process. I made a lot of them, but instead of getting upset, I learned from each one. Every time I said something wrong, I just tried again until I got it right. And that's another important tip. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. The more you practice, the better you'll get. One thing that helped me a lot was listening to English as much as I could. I used to think I needed to understand every single word, but that's not true. Just listening regularly to English, whether it's music, TV shows, or podcasts, helps your brain get used to the language. For example, I used to listen to a radio show from London while commuting to work here in Edinburgh. At first, I didn't understand everything. But over time, my listening skills improved without me even realizing it. Here's a tip that made learning more enjoyable. Find something you love in English. For me, it was TV shows. I started watching a series I liked with subtitles in my own language. After a while, I switched to English subtitles. Finally, I tried watching it without any subtitles at all. It was hard, but it helped a lot. And because I was watching something I enjoyed, it didn't feel like studying. It felt like fun. Another thing I struggled with was pronunciation. Sometimes I knew the words, but people still couldn't understand me because I didn't pronounce them correctly. It was frustrating, but I found a solution. I started practicing out loud. Even if I was just talking to myself, I would say new words over and over again until they sounded right. I also used online dictionaries with audio, so I could hear how the words were supposed to sound. This was especially useful when I learned words that sounded very different from how they were spelled. And now, let's talk about grammar. Oh, grammar was tough for me. At first, it felt like a huge mountain to climb. I couldn't remember all the rules, and I kept mixing them up. But then I realized something important. You don't need perfect grammar to communicate. Grammar is important, yes, but don't let it stop you from speaking. It's okay to make small mistakes as long as people understand you. So I focused on getting my point across, and as I got more comfortable, I slowly improved my grammar. I also started reading in English. At first, I read children's books because they were simple and had pictures to help me understand. Then I moved on to short stories, and eventually, I started reading online articles. I didn't always understand every word, but I got the main idea, and that's what mattered. Reading helped me learn new words in context, which made it easier to remember them later. One of the most important things I learned was consistency. If you want to improve your English, you need to practice regularly. I set a goal to practice at least 15 minutes every day. Some days I did more, and some days I did less, but I always did something, whether it was speaking, listening, reading, or writing. It wasn't always easy, but over time, I saw real progress. Speaking of writing, here's another tip. Practice writing in English. I started by writing short messages to friends, and later I tried journaling. Writing helped me organize my thoughts and think about the language in a different way. It also gave me a chance to practice grammar and vocabulary without the pressure of speaking in front of others. One day, I found a language exchange partner online. This was a game changer for me. We would chat in English for a while, and then we would switch to my native language so we could help each other. Finding someone to practice with is one of the best things you can do. It's not just about learning the language. It's about building confidence too. The more you practice with someone else, the easier it becomes to speak in real-life situations. Another tip that worked for me was labeling things around my house with sticky notes. I wrote the English words for everyday objects like table, door, and fridge, and every time I saw them, I would say the words out loud. It may seem like a small thing, but these little reminders help me learn vocabulary without even realizing it. And here's something else that really helped. Thinking in English. At first, I always thought in my own language and then translated it in my head. But this took too long, and I often got stuck trying to find the right words. So I started trying to think directly in English, even if it was just simple thoughts like, I'm hungry, or I need to go to the store. The more I did it, the easier it became, and soon I didn't have to translate everything in my head anymore. One important thing I learned along the way was to ask questions whenever I didn't understand something. In the beginning, I was shy and didn't want to seem dumb, but I realized that asking questions is the best way to learn. Whether it was about a word, a phrase, or a grammar rule, I asked my teacher, friends, or even people online. The more questions I asked, the more confident I became in using the language. Let me share a funny moment from my early days of learning English. I was practicing with a friend, and after we ate a big meal, I wanted to say, "I'm full," but instead I said, "I'm fool." My friend burst out laughing, and I had no idea why until they explained the difference between full and fool. At first, I was embarrassed, but then I laughed too. And that's another tip. Laugh at your mistakes. If you take everything too seriously, it's easy to get discouraged. But if you can laugh and learn from it, you'll feel more relaxed and confident. Finally, remember to be patient. Learning a language takes time, and there will be moments when you feel frustrated or stuck. I remember feeling like I wasn't improving fast enough, and there were days when I wanted to give up. But I reminded myself that learning English isn't a race. Everyone learns at their own pace, and it's okay if it takes time. So to sum up, learning English has been a challenging but rewarding journey for me. I used a combination of listening, speaking, reading, writing, and consistent practice to improve. I made mistakes, asked questions, and found ways to make learning fun. Most importantly, I never gave up, and neither should you, whether you're just starting or you've been learning for a while. Remember that every step you take brings you closer to your goal. Now it's your turn to put these tips into practice. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, ask questions, and find ways to enjoy the process. With time and effort, you'll get better, just like I did. When I first started learning English, I had to remind myself that it's okay to take time. There were moments when I felt stuck, like I wasn't making any progress. I'd study hard, but still feel like I wasn't getting anywhere. However, I soon realized that even small steps, like understanding a new word or having a short conversation without getting nervous, were still progress. Sometimes, the progress was so small that I didn't even notice it right away, but it was there. I learned that the key to learning a language is patience. You can't expect to become fluent overnight, and that's perfectly fine. For example, when I was living in Chicago, IL, I found it challenging at first to use English in everyday situations. I remember the first time I ordered coffee at a cafe. My hands were shaking as I tried to ask for a cappuccino. The words didn't come out smoothly, and I felt embarrassed. But then I took a deep breath, and the barista was patient with me. After a few tries, I finally said it right, and I left the cafe with my coffee and a big smile. That small victory made me realize that even though I wasn't fluent yet, I was still making progress. So my advice is to be patient with yourself. It's normal to have good days and bad days. The most important thing is to keep going and never give up. One thing that helped me stay focused was setting specific goals. Saying, "I want to learn English" is a great idea, but it's a big, vague goal. To make it easier, I broke it down into smaller, more achievable goals. For example, one week I focused on learning 10 new words. I made sure to use them in sentences and practice them until I felt comfortable. The next week I set a new goal, to have a 5-minute conversation in English. These smaller goals kept me motivated because I could clearly see my progress. Every time I reached a goal, no matter how small it was, I celebrated. Whether it was learning those 10 new words or completing a conversation, I felt proud of myself, and that gave me the energy to keep going. Speaking of goals, I once set a really big one for myself, giving a presentation in English. It was for a work project, and I was terrified. I practiced for weeks, going over my speech again and again. I wanted to make sure I knew all the words and phrases I needed to use. When the day finally came, I was so nervous that my hands were shaking, and I almost forgot some of the words. But I pushed through. I stumbled over a few sentences and even forgot a line or two. But I managed to get through the entire presentation in English. Afterward, I felt such a sense of accomplishment. It taught me that sometimes pushing yourself out of your comfort zone is scary, but it's the only way to grow. If I hadn't taken that step, I wouldn't have known how much I was capable of. Another thing that made my English learning journey more enjoyable was connecting it with things I loved. For example, I've always been a huge fan of football. I realized I could make learning English more fun by watching football matches with English commentary. At first, it was difficult to understand the fast-paced talking, but over time, my listening skills improved. The more I watched, the more I could understand what was being said. Eventually, I didn't even need subtitles. The key is to find something you enjoy and make it a part of your learning process. It could be books, movies, music, or even sports. When you're having fun, you'll forget that you're learning, and that makes it a lot easier to stay motivated. One of the best parts of my journey was making friends from different countries who were also learning English. We would help each other with vocabulary, grammar, and even pronunciation. Since we were all at different levels, we could teach each other new things. Having a community of learners made everything more fun. We would laugh at our mistakes together, share tips, and motivate each other to keep going. I remember when one of my friends from Mexico City accidentally said, "I have hungry," instead of, "I am hungry," and we all laughed. Mistakes are a normal part of learning, and having people who understand what you're going through can make the journey feel less lonely. Looking back, I'm amazed at how far I've come. There were so many times when I thought I'd never be able to speak English fluently, but here I am, sharing my story with you in English. If I can do it, so can you. Remember the tips I've shared. Be patient. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Set achievable goals and enjoy the process. It won't always be easy, but every step you take brings you closer to fluency. One day you'll look back and realize how much you've learned. You might even laugh at some of the mistakes you made along the way, but trust me, it will all be worth it in the end. After I started feeling more comfortable with English, I decided to challenge myself even more. I didn't just want to know the basics. I wanted to have real conversations, understand jokes, and even watch movies without subtitles. The idea was exciting, but also scary. I reminded myself that this was just another part of the journey. And with each step forward, things that once felt impossible started to feel more reachable. One thing I noticed was that the more I practiced, the more my confidence grew. Confidence doesn't come all at once, though. It's like building a wall, one brick at a time. For example, I used to get really nervous when ordering food in English. I would practice what I wanted to say in my head over and over before actually speaking. If the person at the counter asked me something I didn't understand, I would freeze. But after doing it a few times, I realized that people don't mind if you make mistakes. They just appreciate that you're trying, and they usually want to help. There was one time I went to a restaurant in New York City, and instead of asking for a spoon, I accidentally asked for a spin. The waiter looked confused, and I quickly corrected myself. We both laughed, and I realized that making mistakes isn't the end of the world. From then on, I stayed more relaxed when speaking English. If you're too stressed, it's hard to focus, but if you stay calm, your conversations will go much smoother. Another thing that helped me a lot was practicing with native speakers. I was lucky enough to have a friend who spoke English fluently, and they were always very patient with me. We would hang out, and whenever I made a mistake, they would gently correct me without making me feel bad. If you don't have a native speaker to practice with, don't worry. There are apps and websites where you can find language partners. This really helped me improve because I was hearing real, natural English with all the slang, expressions, and idioms that you can't always find in textbooks. Speaking of idioms, I remember the first time I heard someone say, "It's raining cats and dogs." I was so confused. I thought they meant actual cats and dogs were falling from the sky. Of course, I later learned that it's just an expression that means it's raining heavily. Idioms like this can be tricky at first because they don't always make sense when you translate them directly. But once I started learning and practicing them, I felt like I had unlocked a new level of English. One last thing that really changed my perspective was realizing that English isn't just a subject to study. It's a tool. It's a way to communicate, connect with people, and explore new cultures. When I stopped thinking of English as something I had to study and started thinking of it as something I could use, everything became a lot more interesting. So if you're feeling stuck or overwhelmed, remember that learning English is a journey. It's okay to take your time, and it's okay to make mistakes. Just keep going, set small goals, and enjoy the process. One day you'll be telling your own story in English, just like I am now. Once I began using English as a tool for learning, everything changed. I used to struggle with it, seeing it as something I had to learn because it was necessary. But once I started reading articles, watching tutorials on topics I was interested in, and talking to people from different countries, it no longer felt like a task. Instead, it became something I wanted to learn. English wasn't just another subject in school anymore. It became a key that opened doors to new knowledge, ideas, and connections.